Hi everyone, this is an optional video to help you with your homework. The handout is called Practice 1-2. I'm only going to be reviewing 5 problems, but they are 5 problems similar to those found in your homework, and I'm going to try and cover a variety of the types of problems. Alright, so just so you know, these problems are not coming directly from your homework, but like I said, they are a problem similar to those in your homework. So take what you learn here and apply it to the problem that you actually have on the page. So you have to solve 4t plus 9 equals negative 8t minus 13. So this you should be able to kind of do straightforward from your notes. So first you rewrite the problem. You move the variables to one side, so I added 8t to both sides to move the variable to the left. I'm left with 12t plus 9 equals negative 13. But then I have to move the constants, the numbers by themselves, to isolate that variable t. So 12t equals negative 22. But to completely isolate it, I do have to divide by 12 on both sides, and I get t equals negative 22 over 12. The reason I chose this problem is because your answer ends up being an improper fraction, and if you actually try and divide that, it's not a very pretty number. So, something that you can do is leave it as an improper fraction, but I do want it reduced. So you can reduce by 2, dividing by 2 on both the numerator and the denominator, and we see our final answer is t equals negative 11 over 6. Now if you want to check your answer to make sure that you got the answer correct without me having to tell you it's correct, you substitute the answer that you got into the variable, meaning originally it was 4t plus 9 equals negative 8t minus 13. Well, to check your answer, anywhere you see a t, the variable, you instead put our answer of negative 11 over 6. Now I know this might look intimidating to actually multiply with a fraction, but remember any whole number is an invisible fraction over 1. So you see I put the 4 over 1 and the negative 8 over 1. When you multiply fractions, you just multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. So 4 times negative 11 over 6 ends up negative 44 over 6, because I just multiplied the 4 with the 11. Likewise, the negative 8 times negative 11 over 6 ends up positive, because it's a negative times a negative, 88 over 6. Now for the next step, I need to, now at this point we have both integers and fractions, so we want to get everything into a fraction, a common denominator. So I noticed that I already have 2 of the values that are over 6. I decided I'm just going to make everything over 6. I could have reduced the fractions 44 over 6 first and the 88 over 6 and then been working with the denominator over 3. Either way, we're still going to end up with the same answer. So I just left everything as over 6. Now remember that whole numbers, integers 9 and 13, are invisibly over 1. So if I have to change that 1 into a 6, I also have to do that to the top. So 9 times 6 is 54, and 13 times 6 is 78. Now to actually finish the problem, or finish checking my answer, I should say, I can actually combine the numerators on the left and the right side. So negative 44 plus 54 is 10, so it's 10 over 6 on the left. 88 minus 78 is also 10, so it's 10 over 6 on the right. Notice that the left side and the right side of the equation match, so that means that the answer of negative 11 over 6 is correct. Meaning you could know that you got the problem right even without me as your teacher checking it. This could also be done in a calculator. I just showed you the method by hand, but just make sure that if you put this in a calculator that you enter everything very carefully. And then you'd have to enter the left side first, see what value you get, and then the right side of the equal sign, see what value that you get, and then make sure that they match. Alright, next problem. So this is like a word problem. You have a few of those on your homework. So to paint, Tim's company charges a base fee of $250 plus $14 per hour of painting. The Colorful Company does not charge a base fee, but they do charge $22 per hour. So how many hours of painting must occur in order for Tim's company to be the better deal. So, for example, if there was only 1 hour of painting, Tim's company would charge $250 plus $14 for 1 hour. So that would already be $264 just for 1 hour of painting. On the other hand, the colorful company, $22 per hour, you'd just be paying $22. So the colorful company would be cheaper. But past a certain number of hours, eventually Tim's company will be the cheaper one over the colorful company. So that's what we want to find out. So I know that at some point they'll have the same price. So Tim's company, $250 plus 14 per hour. I just put an H to represent the number of hours. And the colorful company, $22 per hour. So at some point they have to be equal, and then past that point Tim's is cheaper. So I do have to move my variables to one side. I subtracted 14H from both sides. I'm left with 250 equals 8H. Divide by 8 on both sides, and H equals 31.25. Meaning for over 31.25 hours of painting, Tim's is actually the better price. But if the job is less than 31.25 hours, then the colorful company would be the one that's the better price. So in these types of problems, I think the most challenging part is the beginning, setting up the equations. Remember, wherever it says per, so for example, $14 per hour, that's going to be a number, the 14 times the variable H. Same thing like 22 per hour. So when you see per or each, then that's where you'll have to put your variables. And then remember, at some point they have to be equal until the other becomes a better deal. Alright, next problem. This one, it says solve and check your answer. Now the reason I chose this problem is because not only does it have that negative up front, but it has a lot of decimals that we're working with. Don't be intimidated. We're actually going to work this out just like every other problem. It's just going to look a little different. And it might make you freaked out that you're going to get the wrong answer. Now that negative, because it's in front of parentheses, does need to be distributed into the parentheses. So everything that's inside of the parentheses changes sign. Now it's negative 0.79 m minus 0.227 equals negative 2.09 m minus 0.838. And just like every other problem, we have to get all of our variables to one side. So I added 2.09 m to both sides. And then we have to move the constants to the other side. So I added 0.227 to both sides. I'm left with 1.3 m equals negative 0.611. And to get the m completely alone, I do have to divide by 1.3. So that means that m equals negative 0.47. Remember that if we want to check our answer, we just have to substitute it into the variable. So wherever there was an m before, I now put negative 0.47. You do have to follow the order of operations. So first I need to multiply. Oh, actually first I need to do what's in parentheses, and within those parentheses multiply. Then actually add what's in the parentheses. And then now I can apply that negative that was up front. So I end up with positive 0.1443. On the right side, once again, within the parentheses, I need to multiply and then add those values together and then apply the negative that was up front. So notice both sides equal 0.1443. So my answer was correct. And this, just to let you know, even I used a calculator. You, of course, can do all this multiplication by hand, but if you do, make sure that you multiply very carefully because any little mistake can make a difference in the value. Alright, next problem. Oh, these, you'll see some of these even on your TSI test. A lot of students have a hard time with these just because of the way it's worded. But here we see 3 times the sum of a number and 4 is 8 less than 1/2 the number. Write and solve an equation to find that number. So 3 times the sum of a number and 4. So notice I have that in red. I know it's 3 times, and then the sum. Sum means plus. So I have to add together a number. They didn't tell me which number it was, so I just put the letter N. I have to add that number with 4. So N plus 4, and all of that multiplied by 3. Because I wanted to say all of that multiplied by 3, I put the N plus 4 in parentheses. Is. Wherever you see the word is, that's an equal sign. And then 8 less than. So 8 less than something else. It's like saying if one person has $10, 8 less than that would be $2. So you're actually going to have to take something and subtract 8. But what am I subtracting 8 from? Well, it says 8 less than 1/2 the number. So I actually wrote 1/2 the number N. So now that I actually have the equation set up, I can solve it the way we've been doing the rest, but I do acknowledge that the wording is probably the hardest part. I recommend reading through it multiple times, making sure that the way you've written it matches the way the word problem is written. So I do have to distribute that 3n plus 12 equals 1/2 n minus 8. Move all my variables to one side, so I subtracted 1/2 n. I could have continued working with fractions, but I just kind of thought about it, and I thought 3 minus 1/2, well, it's going to be 2.5. So I switched over to decimal. Whatever you feel more comfortable with is fine with me. So 2.5n plus 12 equals -8. I now have to move my constants over, subtract 12 from both sides. I have 2.5n equals -20. And to get n alone, divide by 2.5. I end up with a final answer of n equals -8. And then you could always test yourself. I could have plugged it back into the original equation, but just because I want to make sure I did it right, I thought more about the words in the problem. So I thought, okay, well, the sum of this number and 4 is -4. And 3 times -4 is -12. So that's going to be what's on the left side. On the right side, I have to think 8 less than 1/2 the number. Well, half of that number, -8, is -4. And 8 less than that is -12. So notice that my left and the right do match. So this is the correct answer. Alright, last problem. This one had talked about a square and a rectangle that have the same perimeters. The length of a side of the square is 4x minus 1. Can the length of the rectangle be 2x plus 1 and its width x plus 2? And explain. Well, whenever I hear talk about shapes, I right away want to draw them. So I think I have a rectangle and a square, and I know that the rectangle has a side length of 4x minus 1. And they're asking, can the length and width be what's shown on the rectangle? So for now, I'm just going to assume that that's actually the length and the width until I find out otherwise. So what do we know about a square? All sides are the same. And what do we know about a rectangle? Opposite sides are the same. So I've labeled them accordingly. Now perimeter. Perimeter, if you recall, is all the side lengths added together. So for the rectangle, for the square, the perimeter is 16x minus 4. Again, I took that from just adding all 4 sides together. For my rectangle, the perimeter is 6x plus 6. Again, by adding all of the sides together. So, I want to find out, can those two things possibly be equal? And the way we find out is by actually trying to work it out. So, I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. I'm left with 10x minus 4 equals 6. I add 4 to both sides. 10x equals 10. And divide by 10 so that x equals 1. So, because I was actually able to get a positive answer, then yes, it is possible for those to be the side lengths of that rectangle if x equals 1. And that's all you have to write as your answer. Now, just to give you a heads up, let's say you had gotten a negative answer, for example. And it's not only about positive and negative, actually, so I shouldn't say that. But I will say this. If I had plugged in, if I plug in the 1 4 times 1 minus 1, that's a side length of 3. That's actually a possible side length. So that's the reason why it is possible. But, and this is just kind of an offhand note, if let's say my answer had been -1, so I'm still able to come up with an answer, but hypothetically speaking, if it was -1, 4 times -1 is -4, minus 1 is -5. It's not possible for a square to have a side length of -5. You can't have a negative length. So in this case, then it would have been an answer of no, it's not possible. So not only was I able to get an answer, but I was able to get an answer that made the side lengths possible, which is why, yes, it is possible. All right. Well, those are all of the problems that I had to show you today. Good luck on your homework. Send me emails or questions on Edmodo if you have any. And I'll see you soon. Bye.